Hello, everybody. This is William Del Pilar, and this is the Red, White, and Rude, where politics is downstream of culture, and I'm here to interpret it all. We've got a great show today for you guys. We're going to talk about TikTok. It shut down briefly last night, and then it came back up. They slammed Joe Biden for shutting down, then thanked Donald Trump for letting them live in a nutshell. We are going to talk about that. Then we're also going to talk about Hollywood and the three ambassadors that Donald Trump has appointed to try to kind of bring Hollywood back up to its golden age. I don't know if that's possible. We will talk about the individuals who he did appoint. And then we're going to talk about Darren Bell, DEI in action to win a Pulitzer, an individual who hates conservatives, who calls conservatives racist, wishes them dead, accuses them of being groomers, and lo and behold, who gets arrested for pedophilia? Darren Bell. We're going to talk about him. And then we're going to talk about another moron, Bill Burr's moronic defense of California and its management of the LA fires on Jimmy Kimmel Live. A clear-cut embarrassment. Before we go on, do not forget to like, and then once the podcast is over, also share this podcast of the Red, White, and Rude. You can also find my conservative talk podcast called Fired Up and my Points on the Board, where politics and sports collide. But we don't always talk politics and sports. We sometimes will just talk sports on Points on the Board, just like sometimes we'll just talk culture on the Red, White, and Rude. You can find these podcasts at grumblingsmedia.com, as well as Rumble, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, y Pandora, under the handle Grumblings Media. I had to think about that for a second. All right, let's get down to it. TikTok and the new Code War. How America sleeps through its own indoctrination. We are now in a digital age where social media platforms wield significant influence over public opinion and cultural norms. We saw that in 2016, 2020, and the 2024 election cycles, and it was an abuse of power by social media platforms, and we're having it again. TikTok, it emerges not just as an entertainment app, but as a focal point of geopolitical tension. So we're going to discuss TikTok, and we're going to frame it in a way that it's a modern day Trojan horse. You see, I served. I know how nations use our own tools, our own laws, our own regulations, our own way of life against us. There's a individual, a professor at Yale, I want to say, or Princeton. She's called the Tiger Mom, and she talks about this culturally in terms of how certain cultures do better than other cultures, and how one culture can come in and take over just because they take everything that's American and good about it, and they exponentially amplify it onto their own cultures, and they eventually take the better jobs. And none of this is given. They've earned it. Well, nations do this, but in a vile way. You know, they use our own tools to indoctrinate, to change how we educate. So China is one of those nations. And we're going to talk about their use of TikTok in what I would call, or would say, it serves as an instrument in China's unrestricted warfare strategy against these United States. So we're going to dive into China's perspective of TikTok as a tool for psychological warfare, because that's what it is. What I want to do is try to educate you as to why it's a national security issue. Does that mean I believe TikTok should be taken off and banned? In extreme cases, yes. You have to work with them to make them viable to use. But you also have to look at the nation. And having served, having come from a country that saw two dictators, I'm probably more familiar than the average American. And in America, we take so much for granted. That's why if you talk to an actual legal immigrant, you'll find a lot of them look at us native borns and goes, "You're idiots. Y'all don't realize what you're allowing to happen and allowing willingly to give up." So we're going to talk about this legally and legislatively. spotlighting Supreme Court's decision that could potentially ban TikTok in the long run. And we're going to talk about Donald Trump extending its lifespan. And we're also going to talk about the migration of users to alternative apps, which are still Chinese owned. So let's get down to it. So for those that aren't aware, TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance that is in Beijing, China. So China's perspective on TikTok, ByteDance is a Chinese-owned company and it's controlled by the government in many ways. China views TikTok as a weapon in what they view as unrestricted warfare against the United States. The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, considers TikTok's algorithm a top secret national security asset. Let me explain this a little bit to you. There's probably some secretive issues or items or however or tasks built into the algorithm, but it's also a algorithm that in essence you're forced to give it permission to literally read everything on your phone or your computer. So it's not as much a secret as much as they're literally reading everything on your computer. So China views TikTok as a indoctrination tool. It's a long game for them in terms of brain power, taking, kind of devolving our brain power while their children aren't exposed to the American style TikTok, but more of a STEM or STEAM oriented social media. Science, technology, education, math, or I forget what the E stands for. I'm an idiot on that one. I should know. So what the CCP wants to do is achieve mind superiority by manipulating historical memory, cultural symbols, and perceptions via TikTok. It's all a mind game. And this is how you use it. Our consumption really works various issues in our brain and how it functions. And it focuses on subconscious messaging, which is believed to be and is more effective than overt propaganda. This is like what the former Soviet Union believed. Their long-term subconscious messaging was to get our schools to indoctrinate. Heck, Soviet Union didn't realize how dumb we are. Progressives are indoctrinating, and the key to indoctrination is not teaching us to critically think and to challenge. And the Soviets may have gone to the wayside, but that belief system kind of was picked up by within America and within factions we call progressives. But anyway, the evidence suggests Chinese psychological warfare strategists target the American youth, who are more impressionable than most. It's an age group that is at its most impressionable. As far as my own company, mine and Big John's company here, Grumblings Media, TikTok has shadow banned us. They're still shadow banning quite a bit of conservatives. Why haven't they shadow banned Trump anymore or some of his big time supporters? Well, they're playing the long game. They know how Trump works. And we're going to talk about that here in a bit. Because right now we are facing a fight between the United States, China, and TikTok is the weapon of choice. So the CCP's direct influence, well, the only opinion that really counts when it comes to TikTok's operations is that of the Chinese government and what they decide to do. ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, they actually do joint research with Chinese intelligence to understand online manipulation. In essence, ByteDance, TikTok's owners, work with the Chinese government to manipulate the American mind of our children for their own gain. And in this case, it's to dumb us down. They don't want tomorrow's leaders to be as intelligent as their leaders. And you do that by how they're using TikTok versus their own version being more STEM related, more education related. So let's talk about Peter Schweizer. He works for Breitbart a lot, but he's an in-depth researcher, has written many books. He did a lot of research. And this research was the basis for Congress's legislation. He exposed, working with the Government Accountability Institute and his book, Blood Money, that played a significant role in highlighting the potential national security risks associated with TikTok's ownership. ByteDance, a Chinese company. What he did was show how it was interrelated, how ByteDance used TikTok in conjunction with the Chinese government to literally use it as a tool against Americans by using and indoctrinating our children with it. And his investigations brought attention to how the Chinese Communist Party uses TikTok for that reason I just gave. And he described it as a modern day Trojan horse for China's unrestricted warfare strategy against us. Now, Schweizer's research did amplify awareness of TikTok's potential as a national security risk, but the concerns were already present among U.S. government agencies. You know, we may not government, but they do have a lot of smart people working there. And government action was delayed due to the complexity of tech geopolitics, legal challenges, and the need for political consensus, which finally led to legislative action in 2024 to either force ByteDance to divest TikTok or face a U.S. ban, which Trump, and look, I'm a big fan of Trump. I've taken my knocks. I have been canceled as a conservative within my own industry, the fantasy sports industry, for supporting him. But you can't blindly follow. And I am vehemently opposed to Trump's ego and what it's doing right now. You know, so cultural and informational influence. Let's talk about that. Content curation differences. In China, TikTok promotes educational content. See, that's what people don't want to realize. They know what poisons the mind. They promote educational content likened to celery and carrots, while in the U.S. it's more entertainment focused, like a big bag of donuts, sweets. You know, this alone is proof that China has a plan in place and understands the ramification of what it's doing. It's working with ByteDance to indoctrinate and influence our American children in a negative way. Our youth are the primary target here. The strategy involves influencing young, impressionable individuals through entertainment that aims for a long-term societal impact that is negative. A Chinese study notes the highly concealed nature of online propaganda and its potential effects on social stability and political security. And you see it right now. TikTok's just an app. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, moron, you don't know how to critically think and see what they're doing. You know, we can have a TikTok in doses. The problem are parents who use these tools to babysit, not realizing their kids are being indoctrinated. I cover a lot of gaming here on the Red, White, and Rude, and gaming is second to school, if not first, with school indoctrination being second. That's how powerful gaming has begun, and social media is right up there with it, specifically TikTok. So the U.S. Supreme Court decision on TikTok. So the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously upheld the U.S. seller ban legislation on TikTok that's effective today, that they have not shut down because they have Trump's blessings not to shut down. Oh, this is where the liberal in me comes out. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled this way because they defer national security matters to the government. They don't like to get involved in that. But they did recognize the transformative capabilities of new technologies and the need for caution when looking at them from a legal perspective. And they emphasize the difference between TikTok's US and Chinese versions, highlighting how content is moderated and filtered. So in other words, they saw this is what China's feeding our American kids. This is what they're feeding the Chinese kids. They saw a clear-cut difference, and they saw the reasons for that. So the court noted that ByteDance's own TikTok's proprietary algorithm is not only developed but maintained in China, and they raised concerns as well as the potential for, it's not even potential, it's happening, for the Chinese government to access and control data held by ByteDance. You know, in the spy game, when you go over there, whether you're military or not, I saw this in Panama too, the government will get the chicks to go sleep with the guys applying for information. You know, and my point in saying that is these countries will use every trick in the book that you only see in movies. You go, no way. Oh, yes. And they're doing it with TikTok. So again, historically, national security worries by U.S. lawmakers about the relationship between China and TikTok were acknowledged by the Supreme Court. Reference was made to an executive order by President Trump in August 2020, which deemed TikTok a threat. That executive order went nowhere. It was immediately challenged and blocked. What happened was a law was passed that required ByteDance to either sell TikTok or cease U.S. operations by, again, today's date. And that was done in a bipartisan way and signed by Biden. So, what are some of the national security implications? Well, the legislation addressed potential espionage risk due to TikTok's Chinese ownership, with concerns about data manipulation and national security threats again. Those are national security implications. Here's one way they can use it. They find this is stuff they'll sit on for 10, 15 years, and they'll go back, oh, you had this career here. Are they where you said all this, did all this? You know, what's politically correct today may be damning tomorrow. We see that in action all the time. That's just one example. The other example, they build a dossier on you as a businessman. They know your likes, dislikes, you know what kind of women they'll set you up with women. I mean, governments, the Chinese are very devious. Again, they do this in the spy game all the time. Lots of Chinese women there. Look at Swalwell sleeping with Fang Fang. You know, as he thinks he's plowing her, she's really plowing him and America. But because it's progressives, he's still serving on the Intel Committee on top of that. The point being is, this is data they will figure out a way to use against us. TikTok argued the ban infringed on First Amendment rights, and it does, but the Supreme Court upheld the ban because national security trumps the First Amendment. In their eyes, at least. In your eyes, maybe not. There has to be balance. Well, we have free speech, or we have this, we have that. Yeah, Americans do, not foreigners, and that's one reason SCOTUS ruled that way as well. So there's about 170 million U.S. users. TikTok is a major platform for community, news, and art. And then if they only allow one side of the political argument, they're allowing the side that's been helping and friendly to them. Joe Biden has reaped millions via China. So they help the progressives and keep the conservatives off. It's not as bad as it was, but once they saw the tide shifting and Trump coming back into power, they eased up just enough to play up to Trump's ego. So Trump is talking about a 90-day extension. This can quickly backfire. Democrats will use this against Trump if something breaks in a negative way towards the U.S., and it can be directed through TikTok. See, Democrats want to control social media platforms. They don't want to work with them. They want to control them. And TikTok's a wild card, and they don't like that. So obviously there's discussions on balancing national security with free speech. You know, Rand Paul is in the thick of that. You know, what has Rand Paul actually accomplished? Like his daddy, nothing. You know, and just a reminder, Daddy Ron Paul was the publisher of the Ron Paul newsletter, a very, very racist newsletter. I saw that. I saw one of those newsletters. And he's also homophobic, just to give you a reminder of who Ron Paul is. Yeah, everybody is Ron Paul is God. Ron Paul is a racist bigot. And that's not me saying that. There is documentation to that. So anyway, I digress. So what are some of the implications for U.S. security and policy? Well, there's concerns over TikTok's algorithm being a national security asset. And who controls that? China. Oh, I'm sorry. So going back to Trump extending it for 90 days, without an extension or sale, TikTok will eventually stop functioning. So this extension is very important, and they want to get something done without giving up control. So China's plan is, how do we maintain open channels with the U.S., but we keep control? We're going to talk about that through Kevin O'Leary here shortly. But that's where we're at right now. So the national security concerns, again, the TikTok algorithm, which is considered a national security asset, is controlled by China. Again, our only option is to ban them or take ownership of it, an American company. You know, and Trump technically has no powers to directly repeal or change a law passed by Congress, or so I thought. And we're going to talk about why I'm wrong on that. So it turns out just because it's a law does not mean it will actually be implemented or or supported. So eventually China's going to have to choose between selling TikTok or letting it die, theoretically. I think they're going to find something in the middle. Now, my take is on the algorithm, the Chinese government's not going to allow the sale of its so-called secret algorithm. Again, they may have some secret stuff in there, but you hitting accept gives the app permission to literally grab every bit of information from your phone. I think one of the things we may have to eventually implement is foreign corporations do not have the ability. They only have the ability to do the bare minimum. And I do believe we need to go as China does, as other nations do. If you're not an American citizen, you can't own land or you can't be majority owner. This protects the nation. We keep our rights as American citizens, but these rights aren't or should not be extended to foreign entities. They are not citizens. And this is an ugly truth that every one of us who come from foreign nations, me being born and raised in Panama as an American citizen, see my relatives subjugated to dictators, I see the importance of what I just said. You know, China owns farmland all throughout the country right next or near military bases. That's not coincidence. That's fact. That's so they can spy on us. That's there. That's so they have a foothold in case war breaks out. These are deadly consequences. The average American goes, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? And I blame our education system that indoctrinates and doesn't teach us how to critically think. If you know how to critically think, you go, well, why would China want to have farmland right next to the military installations, William? Well, critically thinking, you'll figure it out. So what are people doing? They're going, well, you know, I think I'm going to change to a new app since they're going to shut TikTok down. Oh my God. When I saw this, when I saw the apps they were going to, I was like, oh my God, we're in a new Cold War. Excuse me. We're in the new Cold War. Governments work with private companies. And TikTok users, especially the younger audiences, while they oppose the ban, they're not thinking about, well, why are they shutting TikTok down as they migrate to other Chinese-owned companies? You know, it takes conservative critics and lawmakers to advocate for divestiture or an outright ban because of security concerns. You know, because we care and we want you to care. I'd love to go on TikTok, but I don't have it on my phone, don't have it on my computer. As a business, we are on TikTok and they have shadow banned us. We actually busted them, and we are right now talking to them about unshadow banning us. Because as a business, it's important to be on there. As an individual, I won't. But I also believe we need to clean it up. As Trump said when it came to the tax laws, why do you follow those tax laws? Because they're there and I can take advantage of them and use them, and it's the law and it's legal. Change it, and I won't. That's how I feel about this. But I'm smart. Again, I don't give TikTok permission to be on my phone, on my desktop. I just use them through the web app. And I am limited in some things, or we are as a company. You know, so what are one of the alternatives we're running into? Well, it's called Red Note. And there's another one. It's in essence, Red Note is known as the Little Red Book or as Red Note. And TikTok users are being shocked right now because Red Note is blocking posts related to sensitive topics like the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre and any talk about the Uyghurs. It enforces what's called the correct view of history. It's how China sees history. The Wrap did an experimentation that showed posts including the iconic Tank Man photo from the Tiananmen Square, were quickly censored. And my take is our TikTok users, our American kids, that stupid, ignorant, naive, whatever you want to call it, to realize they went to an app controlled by China, who, like Russia, revises history. Is their indoctrinated hate toward America, their own country, so deep that they're blind to the truth? Is their lack of critical thinking non-existent? Right now, I have to say yes to all of the above. And you, as a parent, can change that. But you need to start being parents. Oh, William, go screw yourself. Really? Go look at your child's grades. Go look at what they know. Go look at what tools you're using for them to be babysat. Are any of them playing Dragon Age Veilguard? Star Wars Outlaws? Alan Wake 2, where it's woke messaging? And other things that, hey, if they want to go that road, that's fine. But at the age of 18, when they're adults, until then, they're under your ward. So maybe be a parent. Red Note also censors content related to the LGBTQ plus community, which is ironic. It's like, gays for Palestine. Yeah, go over there and see how quickly it takes for them to throw you off the roof. Some American users receive warnings or suspensions per NPR for discussing or showing transgender content and issues or wearing revealing clothes. It's like, it's a Chinese-owned app. What did you think was going to happen? Again, the supposedly woke are too naive to realize how China works and believe, or rather how they believe culturally. So some Americans, this is what you call a culture shock. How dare you? How dare you? Well, it's a Chinese-owned app. It's not how dare you. It's they have the right. There is not a free speech environment on TikTok or these Chinese apps, as they've censored conservative speech and obviously anything that's LGBTQ or anything that's negative towards China. And it's ironic that users are fleeing one form of potential government control, the U.S. ban on TikTok, to encounter even stricter controls. Red Note has seen a surge of downloads. It's temporary. One thing American kids are finicky. If all these bans happen, most of them will just migrate to another one. That's the thing about apps. Facebook is slowly dying in the United States. It may have a few billion people worldwide, but it's dying. It's aging out. It's mostly older people in their 40s and up. The younger kids are going to different software, different apps. That's why they bought WhatsApp. That's why they bought Instagram. Meta did, who owns Facebook. Is they know one day, 40, 50 years from now, if not sooner, Facebook will be inconsequential in the U.S., where most of its money comes from. Then there's a little red book, Yohong Shu. It's what it translates to Little Red Book. And what's that is reminiscent of Mao Zedong's famous book, A Quotation of the Cultural Revolution Era. It started out as a lifestyle and shopping guide. It's evolved into a platform like Instagram. You share photos and videos, and it retains e-commerce elements. It's linked again to Mao Zedong. Just to remind you, Mao Zedong killed up to 80 million individuals, most of them starving from his policies. The founder, Mao Wenchao, he's claimed the app's name was inspired by the colors of Stanford's business school. He's stating that with the blessing of the Chinese government. They will say and do anything to be accepted. But no, it's red for the Chinese government. But they're playing up to the indoctrinated American gullibility and self-loathing of their own American way of life and willingness to believe anything else but the truth. TikTok users are creating content that include anti-American sentiments. This is one reason they're going to these Chinese-owned apps. They think giving a thumb to daddy, to Trump, to American government. No, all you're doing is enabling what China wants to do long term. Americans will eventually self-loathe their freedoms away to tyranny and are too naive, ignorant, stupid, fill in the blank there to see that. And why? To me, it's because critical thinking is no longer taught. And indoctrinating kids that hate their country of birth and support countries that remove freedoms is proof of that. Again, other countries protect themselves by only allowing citizens to be primary owners in businesses, land, etc. We have to take a hard look and start implementing that here. We're not taking freedoms away from any American citizen. We're ensuring we maintain our freedoms in the long run, so outside forces can't come in and take advantage of these same freedoms in terms of the regulations and laws on the books. And China is doing that. Russia did it for many years. So, who is looking to buy TikTok? Well, Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame is one individual. For those of you not familiar with Mr. O'Leary, there you go. He's offered ByteDance, $20 billion in cash. I think he's probably working with Trump behind the scenes. Again, I don't see China giving up the algorithm. And originally, I would have been they're not going to sell, but they may do a soft sell, meaning they still call the shots, they still control it, but on paper, O'Leary and company will own it. This is just greed on O'Leary's part. He can lie whatever he wants. He sees an opportunity here, and he's got the cash and the associates to be able to do this. He's a smart businessman. I mean, he's taking advantage of the fact, well, look, they're in a position they may be forced to sell. Let me jump in. So he's trying to form a bipartisan advisory committee to negotiate with ByteDance. I mean, he's formed that they're trying to negotiate. I think Trump's going to step in and help. And what does this mean? Trump's picking and winning the choosers is what he's doing. So obviously the public is against all this. They love TikTok as it is. There's a political and legal context and broader implications. Meaning, what does a sale mean in terms of shifting the control of TikTok? Peter Schweizer, the individual I mentioned, the author of the book, argues for a ban if Beijing refuses to sell TikTok, emphasizing its role in undermining American society. I'm with Peter. And that narrative underscores the geopolitical tensions and the strategic use of TikTok by China to influence globally while maintaining educational focus domestically. In other words, they're poisoning the world globally with this mind game, this psychological warfare, while maintaining a strong educational focus to become the dominant society as we move into the future. It's human nature, people. This is human nature. So before I close this down, why is Donald Trump doing this? What authority does he have to do this? Well, obviously, the landscape of international politics and business is complex, and it's not just policy and economic considerations. So Trump is looking to delay it. He's going to delay it, he says. And he's looking at the app's popularity with young voters, economic impacts, legal challenges, and legislative maneuvers will play a significant role. I think he's wrong on a lot of it. It's a national security issue, and that trumps all. When I did my research, this came up quite a bit, and I'm going to just read it. While factors like the app's popularity among young voters, economic impacts, legal challenges, and legislative maneuvers play significant roles, another crucial element comes into play: Trump's ego. Known for his responsiveness to flattery and personal gestures that stroke his ego, Trump's decision-making process often reflects a personal touch. If TikTok or ByteDance, its parent company, had engaged in actions that cater to Trump's sense of self-importance, this could very well influence his stance on the ban. At the end of the day, it's his ego. Now, the other reasons is the popularity, again, among young voters. It has a large user base, and Trump wants that base to vote his way in the next two mid-cycles, or rather the next mid-cycle. Then there's economic impact. Many small and medium businesses and even multinational corporations rely on TikTok. See, that's wrong because it's right, but whenever something goes to the wayside, something else rises in its place. Then he's looking at the legal challenges. Again, SCOTUS is already ruled. They have the right to sit there and remove it. So there is no legal challenge anymore. Political strategy, maybe he's looking to get the young vote. I don't know. Legislative maneuvering, that's done. The law was passed. Outside of trying to extend it. You know, I think if there's a group of people within the government could challenge it legally, and that will, Trump is not an all-out authoritarian or has that ability, and there could be some legal challenges there. And again, Trump's ego. He has a history of responding positively to flattery when his ego is stroked. You know, and that's what TikTok has done. Well, thank you, President Trump. You know, his head big as a house right now. And that flattery. So where does he get the authority to flout the law and ignore it? Well, executive authority. As President Trump has a lot of executive authority over national security and foreign policy issues. And this whole issue with TikTok was framed as a national security issue, and that falls under executive purview. But he's going to lose support in the Senate. He's going to lose support in the House, which means everything he thinks he has a mandate to do will get stalled. So the legislative branch must pass laws the executive branch can influence or align with legislative actions. I first saw that here in California. There was some law that was going through the courts, and I think it was Newsom came in or Brown came in and said, "No, we're not going to enforce it." And it kind of died. The only people who were supporting it out through the courts wasn't the California government and the activist groups, which is activist groups. Yeah. So Trump could support a ban if it gets passed. I mean, not a ban, but an extension to avoid the ban. So he could try to use his political power that he's earned, his political capital in that way. There's also the administrative delays. They could use administrative procedures to delay it. And that's how the Trump effect can play out. So the scenario with TikTok exemplifies the broader contest between national security, privacy, and freedom of expression in this new digital age, and how our enemies use our own weapons against us, meaning our love for abs. Yeah, there are implications for how social media platforms from foreign nations operate in the U.S. Not really. Not right now, they're not. But that's what they want you to think. Then there's a transition to other platforms showing the ignorance and stupidity of users, Red Note, Chinese owned. I think American kids aren't that dumb to learn from that. And it continues to highlight the ongoing concerns about data security. China has everything on you. The moment you said "I do" on that app to allow it to install, gave the Chinese government permission to go through every aspect of your phone or desktop if you have it on your desktop. It's no joke. They know everything. You got a dirty pic on there, they have it. You got a text you don't want anybody to see, they have it. And if you eventually become a person of note, they have all this data. You know that little wee pic you showed? Donald, well, we're going to show the world. It's only a 2-inch worm. Of course, I'm being mean here. But you get my point. You see Ramaswamy? We got that image you have of your wife. Of that photo she sent you. We got it now. Of course, I'm giving very extreme examples. But there's a bunch of nut jobs up there that are up-and-coming kids that are doing that. And there'll be somebody someday, and that will be used against them. So, my friends, you need to understand national security ramifications and how other countries are exploiting our own freedoms against us to eventually take control. This has been done since the dawn of civilization in different ways. Technology allows it to be done this way. But this is no big secret in how governments are toppled. Civilizations fall. One civilization comes in and they just literally take over the current civilization, whether through war or economic means. Now we have technological means. So I will keep you appraised of this as issues come up and have an update with what happens with Trump's extension or delay of this do or die date, which is today, and he's going to delay it. He's in power tomorrow, so we'll get that going. All right, let us move on. Trump's Tinseltown takeover. MAGA muses to make Hollywood great again. In what is seen as a surprising move to revitalize Hollywood in Trump's eyes, Trump has appointed John Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone as special envoys to spearhead a return to what he describes as the golden age of Hollywood. This move comes at a time when the industry is facing significant challenges. Big 10 movies are dying. They're not making their money back. Then you have the competition from foreign film industries. You know, the last 6 months, I've been about 80% Indian movies from India. And obviously, there's a perceived decline in traditional storytelling. I put perceived there, but it's not a perceived decline. It's an actual decline in traditional storytelling. Just look at Disney. They want your kid to bend over and doink, doink. That's what they're teaching them. So what's some historical context here? Trump's vision includes making Hollywood bigger, better, and stronger than ever before in his eyes. That's a quote, bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. All three actors have shown support for Trump. Jon Voight has been a vocal Trump supporter since 2016. Mel Gibson endorsed Trump in October 2024, and Sly Stallone has been involved in Trump's social circle. In fact, he called him the second George Washington at a gala this past November. So each of these actors have made their mark in Hollywood, an indelible mark. Unique contributions to film, showcase their talents in acting, directing, and screenplay writing over decades. And that's not an exaggeration. Let's start with Jon Voight. Most of y'all weren't born. I was a itty baby. His career took off with Midnight Cowboy. I remember seeing that on HBO in the 70s as a young child. He received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. It was one of his earliest successes, and it highlighted his ability to portray complex characters. He's a great actor. You know, he won an Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in Coming Home in 1978. Throughout his career, Voight has starred. He was in Deliverance. That's a classic, 1972. You know, I want you to squeal like a pig. So that was Biden for his 4 terms. Oink, oink. He was in Runaway Train in 1985, and then he was in the National Treasure series. I want to say that was with Nicolas Cage. That was like about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So he's been around for a while. Very versatile, and he's got enduring appeal. You know, he has continued to work. He's still working. You know, he did Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, Transformers, and he's still on the scale in movies as well as politically today. He's also famous in this sense. He is the father of Angelina Jolie and James Haven. Nobody knows who James Haven is, but another actor kid of his. But she's very famous. She's won an Academy Award. They don't always get along. You know, that's how I discovered. I was like, really? He's a father? Yeah, they don't get along. Yeah. So let's move on to Mel Gibson. We all know who Mel Gibson is, but the great Mel Gibson. He's had his ups and downs. Obviously, he first achieved his international fame with Mad Max series, Lethal Weapon franchise, Braveheart, where he won 2 Academy Awards for Best Director and Best Picture. Directed The Passion of the Christ, which blew up financially. Apocalypto, critical and commercial successes. He had a downturn. He has his issues with Jewish culture. But he made a comeback, Edge of Darkness, Hacksaw Ridge, and that earned him another Best Director nomination. So the guy has done a lot, both behind and in front of the camera, and has been recognized by his peers. Then there is the 80s action star, the top action star of the 1980s, Sly Stallone. He would compete with Schwarzenegger for that title. Sly has proven to have had the better overall career in terms of longevity, and that people actually paying to see his movies. After Schwarzenegger, Schwarzenegger's a cuck. Schwarzenegger is a military abandonment, a deserter, military deserter, abuses women. You know, has been caught philandering. I mean, he's just a bad dude. He is everything that's wrong with male toxicity, as liberals like to give it. That's the bad side of male toxicity. A bully, too. He said our freedoms don't matter, and while he's in his jacuzzi enjoying his big mansion life, God bless him and earn his money. But he's a fraud. You know, I've gravitated to Stallone because his movies ended up being better in the long run. I mean, don't get me wrong. Schwarzenegger has some classics there, Terminator and The First Predator. Stallone has a Rocky series, a Rambo series. He wrote Rocky. Rocky won the Best Picture Oscar. Stallone was nominated for Best Original Screenplay and Best Actor. Rambo started out with First Blood in 82 and just ended its run, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago. Through the 80s and 90s, he was in Cliffhanger, Demolition Man, big box office hits. He came back in Rocky with the Creed series. Of course, he's left that series since then. And he's now in television with the Tulsa King series. So he's still kicking it, where Schwarzenegger's desperately trying to find another hit. So what's the purpose of these appointments? Again, it's to bring Hollywood back to what Trump calls the golden age. to recover businesses lost in foreign countries. He stated those three will serve as his eyes and ears in Hollywood. What's the public's reaction? Well, there's criticism and controversy. They're bringing up Mel Gibson's past anti-Semitic remarks, Sylvester Stallone's association with Trump, Voight's associated with Trump. Well, you know what? We all had more money in our pocket with Trump. So fuck you, Hollywood. I don't give a dime. I don't go to big movies. Most of them are woke. I just did a thing on Blake Lively, how she rides her husband's coattails. Turns out to be a mean girl. Look, when World War II hit, Hollywood, they all stopped. Sports, they all stopped. They all went to serve. Now, they're going to be the ones burning the flag. They reap everything positive about America, but shit on it at the same time. And they wonder why our country's going to hell. Well, because of people like them. People like Bill Burr, who I'm going to talk about. Jimmy Kimmel. These are people who will never have your back, who don't have the cojones. When they leave their homes, their wives are probably being pleasured by real men. That's the type of men that Hollywood breeds and gives us nowadays, in the comedic world at least. I mean, you got Schwarzenegger. Can't keep it in his pants. Not, heck, if he's in an affair with somebody on his own, that's fine. But an army deserter, assaults women, sexually assaults her, allegedly. I think he settled those out of court. Cheated on his wife. So, yeah. So this is a bold move by Trump. He's going to attempt to try to make change. I don't know how successful it'll be. Will it lead to a new golden age? I don't see it. We're so fractured in our viewing habits. I don't see it anymore. But he does set the stage for a fascinating next few years in how Hollywood reacts to Donald Trump. All right. Let's move on to Darren Bell's projection playbook, accusing others of pedophilia while hiding his own alleged sins. So in a startling turn of events, Darren Bell, the Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist, celebrated for his sharp social commentary and advocacy through comic strips like Candorville and Rudy Park. And if you've never heard of him, you're not alone. 90% of America has never heard of him. Cartoons are dying. He has been accused of a grave moral and legal contradiction. Known for his woke, race baiting, and bigotry disguised as a critique of societal and political figures, Bell's recent arrest on charges of possessing child pornography, including AI-generated content, which has been deemed illegal in California, he lives in Sacramento, has led to an examination of what might be described as Darren Bell's projection playbook. So let's explore how Bell, while publicly accusing others of pedophilia and other moral failings, may have just been concealing his own alleged misconduct. So, in a nutshell, this is who Darren Bell is. That's Darren Bell on the bottom. And that's one of his The Groomer editorial cartoons he did, accusing Trump and others of grooming. You know, and yet he's the one caught with pedophilia or with child porn. And I say allegedly, but they wouldn't have charged him unless they caught him with the stuff on his computer, which they did. And we'll get into that in a second. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist. I'll talk a bit about his Pulitzer Prize. Notably, the first black man to win the Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning. That was back in 2019, 6 years ago. His work has been featured in major publications like the Washington Post, New Yorker, LA Times. And he's created comics for, again, Candorville and Rudy Park. So, while it's not entirely proven that his Pulitzer was due to DEI, there's a narrative going around that questions if his political commentary influenced the win of that. So what I mean, he went after conservatives and Trump, and they loved it. So they gave him the Pulitzer Prize. It may have been more about promoting diversity or aligning with progressive political narratives by diversity DEI policies rather than solely on the merit of his cartoons. Specifically, because of his criticisms of conservative figures like Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and Brett Kavanaugh. Progressives love that shit. Now, the Pulitzer Prize Committee says, oh, no. It's for his courage. He had courage to criticize Donald Trump. Yet everything aligns with this was a DEI pick. Kind of like when Obama won the well, hell, what the hell is it? I would want to say Pulitzer Prize, won the Nobel Peace Prize, and hadn't even been in office in terms of having done anything. I just got in the office, and they awarded it to him. Boy, if they could take that back, they would have. 8 years of failures, 8 years of new wars, bad economy, bigger unemployment lines, double-digit unemployment that he changed the formula of to bring it back down to single digits. It really didn't go down. He just changed the formula or used a different formula to recalculate it. In essence, a part-time job of 10 hours a week constituted full employment in his formula. So Canterville, the themes and content was racial, social justice, Rudy Park, political and cultural commentary. Canterville engaged in social issues in a way that was meant to promote hate toward white Americans and Republican politicians. Bell used satire combined with a victim mentality storytelling to address topics like race, politics, and inequality. With Rudy Park, similar to Canterville, addressed progressive themes with an absurdist twist, critiquing Anglos, and at times he'd do both sides. You know, he didn't like the conservative black man either. So let's get down to the details of the case. The investigation began with a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that led to the discovery of child sexual abuse materials. CSAM is what it's defined as, acronym. The discovery of child sexual abuse materials linked to an account controlled by Bell. The case marks the first arrest under a new California law that came into effect at the turn of the year. And it criminalizes the possession of AI-generated child pornography, highlighting a new legal frontier. He was arrested in January 17th, or appeared in court. Appeared in court January 17th to address accusations of possessing child pornography. He's being held on $1 million bail with a scheduled court appearance this coming week on the 23rd. Court documents allege Bell possessed over 600 photos and videos of child sexual abuse material, including both traditional and AI-generated content. This material violates Penal Code 311.11a with over 10 images involving prepubescent minors or those under 12 years of age. That's a lot of material. That's a lot of, oops, hit the wrong button, Mr. Policeman. Or it's just art from my editorial cartoons. I like to look at pee-pee. He did not ensure a plea during his initial court appearance, and the judge allowed for a revisitation of bail at a future hearing. Again, $1 million bail. This could lead to some serious legal repercussions, meaning decades in prison. You know, and why is this garnering interest? Well, he's a well-known political public figure. Some of the public and media reaction, outrage, shocked discussions. It was shocked and created discussions on child safety and media integrity. Progressives said, we must be cautious before throwing somebody under the bus. Kind of reminds me of the Me Too movement. You got to believe all women. Then when somebody accuses a woman, we must be cautious on who we accuse. And I'm shocked that NBC, actually MSNBC, NBC, ABC, the big national outlets did not cover this. It was covered under NBC Bay Area, San Francisco Gate. And then it got onto the main MSN website because of the affiliated relationships they have with the local outlets. There is irony of Bell's previous critiques of political figures considering his current situation. That's what's coming out. What are the implications? We don't know. You know, there's a black eye in progressives. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, I think I covered this gay couple adopting 2 kids and using them for sexual abuse and for prostitution. And that's just one of a whole boatload that have come out in the news the past year. We should have seen it coming. I mean, he was projecting societal he was projecting societal issues, suggesting that politicians and grooming his political enemies were the groomers. It turns out he may be the groomer. It's a form of projection. His history of creating cartoons that attack Donald Trump was seen by some as possibly masking personal issues or hypocrisy post-arrest. Post-Link Bell's arrest, his previous statements about race and identity, questioning the sincerity or motives behind his public persona. I don't see any of that. All I see is a hypocrite, calling conservatives groomers, but he's the one who's actually doing all the grooming. Think about that. Or allegedly doing the grooming. So the arrest of Darren Bell casts a long shadow over his career and the narratives he has championed in his work, or as I call it, the work he's used to grift to make money, because he's the one who's actually practicing what he's preaching against, allegedly. He once used his platform to critique and lampoon those he perceived as morally corrupt, now places him at the center of a narrative that questions the authenticity of his criticisms. Was his commentary on groomers and societal issues a form of projection? If he's found guilty, yes, it was. So I will keep you up to date on this. I'm not going to let this one go. People like Bell are horrible human beings. Horrible. They preach hate. They preach tribalism. And for us to come together, look at my family. We have black, white, straight, gay, well-off financially, the dirt poor. And we don't always get along, but for the most part, we love one another. And then people like Bell and Bell has a half-white mom or dad. No, dad. I want to say dad. I can't remember. He's what I call a self-loather. Hates one half of who and what he is and doesn't acknowledge it unless you bring it up. So I will keep you in the loop on that. I just want to talk here for a few minutes on Bill Burr's moronic defense, exposing himself as a fire management fool on Jimmy Kimmel Live. And what can only be described as a spectacular display of ignorance, Bill Burr, who is a good comedian, he used to be. These comedians, as they get older, they just get terrible, especially when they start involving politics in it. But he was once known for sharp wit and comedic commentary. Now he's just not a has-been. He's still making lots of money, just not funny. I had the honor of seeing George Carlin, I want to say a month before he died. So I'm here in San Diego. It was a terrible show. It was bad. I'm like, dude, you're just an angry man. And I've seen a few other comics on television. Like, dude, you're just an angry man. It's not funny. Sebastian Maniscalco or something like that. I can't remember. His last show I saw it's like, dude, just leave the politics out. I love you to death. You're a conservative like me, but just make me laugh. That's what Bill Burr has become, a caricature of himself. So he took the stage on Jimmy Kimmel Live. In fact, I think I have a still shot of that. Where's that? Oops. Sometimes. Oh, come on. Anyway, I took a still shot of that, and he went on Jimmy Kimmel Live on January 14, 2025 to defend California's wildfire management with an argument so devoid of substance that it left audience questioning his grasp on reality. His defense highlighted a dangerous simplification of the real systemic failures in California's approach to wildfire management, from regulatory neglect to critical leadership absences. Man, I'm just struggling here. Where's my producer when you need it? Here we go. Quotes from Burr. So let's delve into Burr's comments and how he fails to address the gravity of the situation and only showcases his own stupidity. I think everybody did a great job, unlike the internet, unquote. Quote, oh my God, all of these fire experts. Why don't you just fly a helicopter into the ocean? I don't know, because it was 100-knot winds. You want to do that? You want to do that at night, you fucking lunatic, unquote. He's an idiot. First of all, it's not like that. I have been fire trained. When you're in the military, in the Navy, you're fire trained. So I know what I'm talking about. Maybe not to the extent of today's firefighter, but I can relate. Been there, done that, brother. Our ship was on fire. We were floating into enemy territory waters. We were the next Pueblo incident that happened. DC was on alert. The closest bases near us were on alert. Luckily, we pulled our fat out of the fire. But you could look out on the bow and see the enemy with gunboats, rocket propellers, or bazookas. They were waiting for us to enter. So yes, I do know what it means to have a fire, to have your life in danger. Bill, you just abused your power as a moron and made yourself look the fool here. Burr mocked online critics, and some need to be mocked, like Gavin Newsom, saying, hey, we did everything right, there's nothing wrong. Like comics like Bill Burr need to be mocked, who make absurd public suggestions of, oh, good job, 40,000 acres burned, 13,000 structures burned, no water in fire hydrants, and they did a good job, right, Bill? There are regulatory and force management issues. They did not. Get rid of old firewood. It was left there to burn. Once that catches, you get the winds, those embers go everywhere. Water management failures, empty reservoirs, hydrants not able to have pressure to get water. Resource allocation and decision making, cutting the fire budget by $17.6 million. She had right a week before the fire another $40 million in cuts she wanted. Arson and homelessness. Gotta have compassion. There are an average of 25 fires daily from areas linked to the homeless encampments. DEI. Did you know that the 3 top women in LA County itself is like a 0.36% chance of that actually happening without purposeful intervention, meaning they're not looking at the qualifications, they're looking to fill it with a DEI hire? Nationwide is a 0.0157%. And there's other formulas out there that show it even less than that. So in other words, these are DEI hires. Did not earn it hires. They're hired because they're lesbians. In this case, they were all 3 lesbians and women of color. Not because they were qualified. If there was an article that came out, LA fire departments, mostly white, we have a problem. I don't care what color you are. If you're qualified to be a fireman, instead you get one of the DEI hires says if a man is in trouble in a fire and I have to go throw him over my back because I can't, the man's the one who's at fault for getting himself in the wrong place. That's what she said. Not quote word for word, but that's 90% of what I said is what she said. I just, the quote is what I'm saying is a 10% difference, but that's what she said. There's potential for discrimination lawsuits under the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. The irony of that. Major Bass's Ghana visit. Woo! She knew it was a tinder box ready to blow up. She knew it and still went to Ghana. And she's the one criticizing people. I will not leave LA because I have a duty. Left LA, 7 times last I read. Poor fire department, urban planning and emergency response, urban planning failures, faulty emergency alerts, water supply shortages, fire department budget cuts, inadequate police support because there's looting going on, high incidence of fires from the homeless. I put it all in a nutshell. Not to mention state negligence, lack of coordination, environmental regulations impact, the lack of deforestation. Then there's the insurance market interference. State policies have driven insurers away. You can't sit there and put the price of insurance at this level. It's got to stay at this level where they're like, we're going to lose money. Well, okay, we're just going to pull out of the state. That's why you're seeing fire insurance canceled. They'll go bankrupt. Government price controls on insurance that have made California unviable for insurers, leading to coverage shortages and political fallout. The one-party system's lack of accountability contrasts with private sector efficiency, highlighting broader governance issues. In other words, all these things that I said, urban planning failures, faulty emergency alerts, water supply shortages, fire department budget cuts, inadequate police support, high incidence of fires from the homeless, comes from being ruled by one party. There's no accountability. They blame it on everything else. And morons like Bill Burr helping promote those lies. I don't know who is the most stupidest person on that panel that night, him or Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel, Trump laws. I know Biden didn't put money in people's pockets, but I'm rich and I can live through it. So I wanted Biden or Kamala. Bunch of morons. There you have it, my friends. Bill Burr, the moron. Will Donald Trump change Hollywood with Gibson, Voight, and Stallone? Will Darren Bell get the justice he deserves? Not sure. And what will become of TikTok? These stories and more, I will keep you updated. And that is our show tonight on the Red, White, and Rude. Before I forget, like and share this podcast. You can find this podcast, my Fired Up Conservative Talk podcast, and my Points on the Board. And all three of these podcasts is when politics and culture collide with the Red, White, and Rude. Politics and sports collide with the Points on the Board. And obviously conservative talk with Fired Up. Find them at grumblingsmedia.com, as well as YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, y Pandora under the profile handle Grumblings Media. It's been a pleasure, my friends. And until next week, I am William Del Pilar for the Red, White, and Rude, and I bid you adieu.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.